Trigger warning. I mean this seriously, and I mean it literally. This video is going to show several depictions from a Twitter thread of police brutality and potentially some fairly gruesome injuries. I first want to start by saying, in terms of trigger warnings for those that kind of mock the idea, most of the people, and most of the time you hear about it, it's actually silly nonsense, like clapping. Trigger warning, we're going to clap? No, I'm sorry. Trigger warnings are for people who have faced combat war, who have seen friends and family members die, who have faced true extreme trauma. And I have absolutely no problem with legitimate trigger warnings, and thus I want to make sure, I view it kind of like a disclosure warning. They have it in this thread, just a heads up, you're going to see some things in this video that advertisers aren't going to like it, I get it, but I really think we need to talk about France, the yellow vests, and the extreme brutality we've seen. Because it really does feel like, you know, some of these photos I'm seeing are not too dissimilar to some of the Arab Spring stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, in the Arab Spring, people were being massacred in many instances. But we did see this extreme wave of violence, and I really do feel like yellow vests is not slowing down. And the more they do this, the worse it will get. So this thread should be a lesson in what not to do when trying to end a protest and solve your country's problems. But more importantly, it needs to be talked about. It does. The yellow vests protesters come from varying political ideologies. It's a true people's movement. And it could have repercussions across the European Union and even hitting the United States and international markets. If we don't talk about what the police are doing, then it's going to get worse. And hopefully by having the conversation, people will realize this. And I kind of feel like we just need, there needs to be an international moment where the community I feel like it's the French government waving that baton and someone needs to just grab them and say, stop, seriously, stop, you're making it worse. I also just want to point out the extreme injustice the yellow vests protesters are facing. So this is from Sotiri Dimpinotis. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. He's a Greek immigrant who has created this thread. It's getting a lot of traction. So I was actually trying to produce something to show all these different instances, but it's really hard to pull this together. So he says, "This will be my thread of the police brutality in France of the yellow vests protest since November 17th. This will take a long time and it will be a long thread, but I don't care. I'm going to expose the police brutality going on in France of police officers." It starts with this photo you can see of these two men. I'm not sure who they are, but you can see this guy, you know, pulling his baton back. Number 1, police brutality in Toulon towards a person who was not even in the yellow vests protest, but was walking by when police cornered him and started to hit him in the face without reason repeatedly. So keep an eye over here at this man, if you can see him. This guy just comes up, bam, punches him in the mouth repeatedly. The guy's not doing anything. And then they do a slow-mo shot. But again, I want you to see this, and I hope you all took that warning seriously, because some of these photos, look at that. This dude's just minding his own business, and this guy's just whacking him. That's crazy. When you see people who aren't even protesting being beaten, it's like, come on, man. Occupy Wall Street ignited for one reason. Because it was, I believe, 3 women were standing on the sidewalk, not in the main protest group. And a man named Anthony Bologna walked up for no reason and pepper sprayed them all in the face. And they fell down screaming and moaning because pepper spray hurts. Everyone started asking, why did the police do this? These people weren't even in the protest group being arrested. They were outside. And he just walked up and sprayed them. And that ignited a nationwide protest to Occupy Wall Street, which actually swept around the world too. The next one we have, it gets pretty gruesome. This man was hit point blank in the face. He lost 5 teeth and fractured his jaw with a flashball. In this video, an old lady was shot in the head with a flashball. She suffered head trauma. And I'm gonna say it one more time. Graphic imagery. Seriously, please. For those, this is not something everyone. There's blood in these videos. Not everyone can handle this, but this is news. Okay, this is news that needs to be talked about. This 15-year-old boy got hit with a tear gas canister. Was going to the grocery store to get some stuff for his mother. She told him to buy and ended up like this in Strasbourg. Contains some shocking footage. You have been warned before playing. This man is not on the phone. He's covering his face because he has a hole in his jaw from being hit in the face. You can see the blood pouring out. A journalist in France got badly injured. The police officer shot a flashball, breaking his kneecap instantly. And this is first-person footage. The man falls to the ground, wasn't doing anything, and he can't move. He immediately gets surrounded. I have seen actions like this time and time again, but I will say straight up right now, this is rare in the US. There have been videos. There's one video that I tweeted about that went viral where a guy throws something at police and they actually shot him in the balls with, I believe, a tear gas canister. And he falls on the ground and they drag him away. The things we see in the US have been sometimes this egregious. There was one moment in Berkeley where a man, Scott Olson, was shot in the head with a tear gas canister, gave him brain damage. When people were trying to pull him out, the police threw a flashbang into the crowd, okay? A flashbang grenade blew a guy's hand off in France. It's serious that this happens. What we're seeing in France is some of the most extreme stuff I've seen in a long time. It's not as bad as what we see that we saw in the Arab Spring, but some of these images are shockingly reminiscent, for sure. This one is extremely egregious. Elderly man getting hit, and his wife started to go on screaming, "Please don't hit him, I am begging you. Please stop, please, please, please." The elderly man was taken into custody but got released earlier today. The wife of the elderly man has filed a police complaint. They're sitting at a bus stop. Apparently, these people were minding their own business, sitting at a bus stop. The police started beating them, and the wife was screaming, "Please stop hitting him." This may be one of the most terrifying stories. A 51-year-old firefighter got hit by an anti-riot flashball deliberately in the face in France. Collapses immediately to the ground. He is now in a coma and fighting for his life. See, his foot is rigid? When you're limp, your muscles relax. But when, in some circumstances, I'm not a doctor, but I did undergo a lot of first aid training, and when you see people go stiff, that's some kind of nervous shock. There's that famous video that they call One Punch Man, Rufio, the Proud Boy. There's an Antifa guy who swings a baton at him. Rufio blocks it, winds up, punches him in the face so hard the dude goes rigid and falls back stiff as a board. That means that's a true knockout. Your muscles tense up. When you see people make weird motions with their arms, that's brain trauma. That's extremely dangerous. Some of these people may even be paralyzed. So I want to point that out again. You can see his foot. It's bent. That means his muscles have gone rigid. I'm not a doctor, again, don't know for sure, but in my basic training, we would say, in this circumstance, it's likely head trauma. Be careful about moving the neck, because if the neck is broken and you move it, it could sever nerves and paralyze the person, so this is really dangerous. But this may be one of the most important stories. My understanding is, yes, he's in a coma, it was head trauma. If this person dies, it can be extremely, extremely bad for France and the European Union. If a protester who was just leaving was shot in the head and killed, then you're going to see this explode beyond like what anyone could possibly even think. Just the amount of rage people would have. This is a firefighter, apparently. Here's a police officer shoving a guy off a barricade. This one's not as bad. Like, it is bad, don't get me wrong. He just walks up, this dude's chilling, and he just shoves him off the barricade to the ground. But that's not so bad. He's likely doesn't have any serious injuries. He was just pushed to the ground, but it could be dangerous. Here we see a photo of a woman whose head was injured. But here's actually what happened, so let's start that over. This woman right here just gets shoved to the ground, hits her head, and busts it open. Why did the police officer just do that? They don't need to do that. They're becoming increasingly agitated, and the police are getting, it's getting bad. Here's a video that I think isn't nearly as bad as most. It's a cop throwing a brick at the crowd, but at the same time, they're throwing bricks at each other. I'm going to say, listen, I understand you're protesting, there's riots, there's civil unrest, but they're throwing bricks at the police. Don't get me wrong, the police are wearing armor, but this is not the same as the guy who got shot in the head leaving the protest. Here's another video where a protester got hit with a flashbang on his face, and he's bleeding very badly. Here's some people who are sitting there and protesting, and the cop just chucks a tear gas canister in front of them. So, once again, tear gas is bad, but I don't see tear gas as brutality necessarily. If they throw it on the ground, you disperse. The thing I'm concerned about is when you have no choice. The police come into the crowd, they say you need to move. If you don't move, you're going to get tear gassed. You get tear gassed, then you move. Or you endure, because yes, you can. The other instances are like journalists minding their own business, getting their kneecaps shattered, or a guy up against the wall with his hands up getting punched in the face repeatedly. They have more pictures. An image of blood. He says he doesn't want to show the footage because it's way too gruesome. And you think this is bad. Here's a woman who lost her eye. That's terrifying. And I want you to really think about this. You wake up one day, you hear that your people are upset with the government and demanding reconciliation. They're demanding a redress of grievances. That's our right here in the U.S. The woman goes out, nice clothes and jeans, thinking she's going to say, hey, I want to be heard. They shot her eye out. She is blinded in one eye. Here's a man who was from RT France. He was beaten with a baton in the face while he was participating. Look at videos like this. They just knock these people down and start beating them. The main point I'm trying to make, he's got a bunch more videos. Here's one where they beat up another guy. Here's another guy who got head trauma. Here's the police yelling in your face as they fire. Here's a guy in plain clothes pointing I believe it's a 40 millimeter at a journalist. students being zip-tied, a woman on the ground with a head injury. What is this one? Police are pushing students and dragging them through the streets. Another journalist shot with a flashball. French police beating up people in a Burger King, throwing a stun grenade at chest and exploding it. Wow. Let's see this one. For those that are just listening, we're watching a video, there's no audio. I've purposely not turned the audio on, but apparently they detonate a flashbang in front of them. Whoa, okay, I think that was it. It's hard to, wow. That could be lethal, all right? So, one of the guys in France tried picking one up, blew his hand off. Look, so there's a lot. There's a lot of videos, and the thread goes on. But I just want to point out by saying, once again, to reiterate, I hope everyone sees the severity of what's happening to the LBS protesters. I want to make sure that this becomes something that people know is happening, that people who are going shopping, people who are minding their business, are being permanently injured, disfigured, seriously injured. That's what's happening in France. What the French police are doing is going to exacerbate the protests. It's going to make it worse. And you know what? Rightly so. People have a right not to be shot in the face and lose eyes and lose teeth, especially when it's a kid who just wants to go shopping. Anyway, stick around. I got another video coming up in just a few minutes.